This is episode 225 of the Focused Mindset Podcast. And today you get to listen into a conversation that I had with Tiffany Edith. Let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you're called a silly name and then it ends up sticking with you for life? Well, Tiffany Edith recently had her TEDx talk published on YouTube, and it's entitled Hearing the Label Bell. And it's all about this subject. And in this cool interview, you get to hear kind of what her thought process was behind it all and what her preparation entailed, and just a little bit about why this subject means so much to her. Tiffany's so special to me because I got to be her TEDx coach at Ocala, Florida. And she did such a great job. You guys are going to absolutely love her talk, but you're also going to love this interview. So let's get started. This is the podcast where we build strong connections and have amazing conversations using the solution-focused approach. I'm Cher Kretz. I'm a school counselor and a speaker and life coach. For far too long, I lived my life thinking I needed to have all the answers. But now I realize that giving out hope is far more important than giving out advice. And when we come together here, we'll learn to take our thoughts captive and focus on what's most important, so we can make an impact on this world and be the person we were always meant to be. To learn more, head over to cherkretz.com. That's CHERKRETZ.com. Or hop over to Amazon to look up 30 Days to Higher Hopes. You guys are absolutely going to be blown away by my next guest. I have with me Tiffany Edith. She is not only a TEDx speaker, but a TEDx coach. She's also in education like I am. And I have got to know her over the last few months. I'm going to tell you all about it. But welcome, Tiffany Edith. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Cher. I've been looking forward to it all week, and it's here. Let's do this.
I know. It's one of these things to where sometimes you just can't wait to talk to people. And that's the way I felt with you. I've been like, oh my goodness, I just can't wait. We're going to be able to chat. Excuse us if we just kind of like sometimes are catching up. We can't help it. You live all the way out in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm all the way here in California. We don't get enough time to chat.
Talking with you is always like a reunion. You were my coach, and it flew by. And I also was in the audience when you gave your TEDx in Ocala.
Oh.
And little did I know that we would just bond when you were my coach 1 year from then.
I know. It's just amazing. It's amazing how when you put yourself out to do something that is outside of our comfort zone, how the universe just brings the right people into your path. And it's just so cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a thread, you're watching the story unfold, and you can look backwards and see all the twists and turns, but you could have never guessed.
I know. And so you were a TEDx coach for one of the amazing speakers of TEDx Ocala 2023. And then you turned around and were able to be invited to be a speaker the very next year, just last month, in TEDx Ocala 2024. We'll just talk about your topic first. I felt really blessed myself when I could resonate with the topic of the person that I was coaching. I can say for sure that it wasn't just that we were able to sort of be near the same time zone, that there were other things in play. You spoke about something that's close to my mindset, and it's how we look at other people and how we view them, and really the names that we call them, and you call them labels. And it's really, really cool how you unwrapped it. I want everyone to go and watch your TEDx and really get the gist of it. Tell me how you came about wanting to do a talk on how we label people and what that is to you.
Yes, I like to be more aware. I like to meditate. I like to be able to see my own thoughts, hear my own inner voice, hold myself accountable, have some radical acceptance. The older I get, the more I try to hone those skills. And so I want to catch myself when I am lying to myself or fluffing or being insecure or hiding. When you get mature, you can sense it more. You just know yourself more. And I had perceptions about myself and I had comparisons. I like to categorize, and I realized that that could be very healthy in the material world. It could help you do your job very well, but when it comes to the realm of being sympathetic or feeling like a victim as opposed to feeling like you have agency,
Mm.
there are these fine lines, and it's kinda like calibrating and fine-tuning an engine is to look yourself in the mirror and say, "Is this what you intended to do? Are you doing this purposefully?" And so the idea of labels came up probably I can't pinpoint the very beginning, but I wanted to hear my own inner dialogue. And so when I focused on myself, then I was able to make a greater application for human flourishing and the common human experience. And the topic for TEDx Ocala 2024, which was their 10th anniversary, was humanity and be better humans, right?
Mhm.
That's like a plaque I have in my kitchen that I got from my mom.
Mhm.
And so I thought, okay, I think I can articulate one or two, three ideas here. I can use some personal examples, plenty of those, like ways that I had botched it.
And it is interesting how it always starts with our personal reflection. There's tons of stuff that we learn throughout our lifetime, but at some point, you were looking at your own self in the mirror and saying, "How do I view myself? And where did that view come from?" And that self reflection allowed you to expand your mind to questioning it, allowing yourself to be curious about why you view yourself the way that you do. And I think that's huge. And when we share things from our heart, it should be from our heart, not just one of the random things that we've learned along the way. When we believe labels about ourselves that we're told to ourselves that we never intended or was born to believe about ourselves, we sometimes are believing just a story. So, how do you define labels in this talk? And what was one of those defining moments where you realized that you were looking at yourself in a way that wasn't helpful?
Yes, I definitely needed this for myself. It was kind of an audience of one, and it went from there. And honestly, I had to make it PG. I had to find something that wasn't too complex or personally vulnerable because it was a general audience. And so I made a list. Of course, I'm like, well, I don't want to say, I want to know, I don't want to be that open
Yeah.
and upfront. And I did come up with tomboy. That was something I do remember, that actual time when I came out of a tree, and it was a man, I don't remember who, just that there was a man, and there was a tree, and there was me, and I was called a tomboy, and I did take that on as I don't know if it was a challenge or a sense of pride, like you claim something, "Oh, you're gonna call me that? Alright, well, I'll claim it," and there's a it goes so much deeper even than that my talk mentioned because identity is so complex. But once I started acting on it, I knew that that was something that I could show, I could articulate very concretely.
Mhm.
Then I tied it into the fact that I had a daughter. What's so great about the story about my daughter is she's 14 now. It's a happy ending. I turned out okay. I survived.
Like we all do.
Being right,
We
exactly.
learn
And
lessons
those
along the
stories
way, though.
you never get old. And I just heard a quote, something like, "You can't teach something you're good at. You can only teach something you had to learn."
Right?
Like something you had to bang your head against and you had to fail 42 times and you're like, "Eureka!" You have to before you try to put something so
Like,
simple, but
"What?
I
I
do
think I
enjoy
just got it." Yeah.
I had it backwards, like, literally, I needed a flathead screwdriver, not a Phillips. So that's kind of like the loose screws in my head. I'm like, "Look, you gotta have the right screwdriver, and here's how," and, as a metaphor. But my daughter was someone who it was like where the rubber met the road because you wanna postpone these hard conversations, trauma, your past. I mean, you would never willingly just try to drudge stuff up and sit there. Navel gazing was a term used in my family, right? Which makes it sound so negative, self reflection. But really, when my daughter came along, it was like, oh, I am not going to put this off anymore for her sake, for the next generation. This is a literal I have a deadline, 9 months, right? I have a deadline before she starts to encounter things in the world, and I'm not going to leave her at a loss the way I was. And
Yeah.
and that's what all parents do. Yeah, all parents try to make the world a better
I
place
know,
for
I
their
thought it
kids.
was so interesting. I do remember when you first shared that story with me of being called a tomboy, and then how you reflected back on all the different ways that you were like, "Okay, if I'm a tomboy, then hey, bring it on." But then it
Yeah, I'll
also
be the best
Yeah,
boy they ever saw.
right.
Yeah.
But at the same point, it started to make you feel as though, and I think you do mention this on stage, like somehow boys must have it better than girls. And that is something that why, even to the point where, you know, the girls are less than. And I think that that really, really to me helped me see how important it is that we think about what we call people, how we treat them, how we go about our own communication with other people. Because one, oh yeah, you're a tomboy, and then maybe someone else, yeah, actually ended up starting a pathway in your mind. It's like a train, down a track.
Seeing in my conservative traditional upbringing, seeing men as leaders, only men preachers, only men in the elders meetings, because I was heavily involved in church, my family was. And then only men were signing contracts, only men were making decisions, only men were being educated at seminary.
Yeah,
And not that women weren't working so hard and supporting the community,
right.
but the men had most of the
The
microphone and
roles. Yeah. Mhm.
yes, the roles,
Mhm.
and they could lead. And, whether or not you intend that to be a message, and even though you might be very kind to the women in your lives, if they are not leading and being educated, those little girls notice. And I was jealous. I wanted to be the right-hand man. I wanted to get a doctorate degree, and when I was 10 years old, I remember looking at the church and thinking, "I wanna shepherd a flock." If I had been a boy, I think that that would have been the call to ministry
Mhm.
that many, people in my circles mentioned,
Mhm.
but when that happened, and I know it happened in my soul, you'll just have to take my word for it, I remember thinking, "I'm not gonna tell anybody
Wow.
because I'm not allowed."
Yeah.
That's, like, unbiblical, and when I got older, I look back and I was like, "Yeah, that was a call," that for what it was, I had longed to study the scripture. I had longed to fill a pulpit and share a message. And I'm very happy with my life and the messages that I get to share in the way that I do now. But
But it was still crazy to reflect upon that time, right? Because you're like, "Wow," that was something that I felt I changed. I shifted, my entire way of looking at something based on really just labels. I mean, when it comes down to it, that's still actually something that happens quite frequently, I'm sure, to many women, because there is a church that my daughter goes to now, and her and I go to different churches. She's an adult, and they took on a pastor that was a woman that was going to preach one Sunday of the month. And there was about 100 people that stood up and said, "This is not okay." Even though when you hear this woman speak, it is a gift from heaven. It's so beautiful and it's so touching. And the way that she brings scripture into a very practical way. And that pastor had to stand up and say, "This woman is gifted and I am going to hire her and she's going to speak once a week." And those 100 people left the church. That when my daughter told me that story, I said, regardless of what you believe as far as leadership and the Bible and stuff, um, that was an amazing thing for me to hear. And of course, I had to go online and listen to this message that she first spoke on at the platform, and it led me to realize that she probably went through a very similar journey that you did, but somehow was and the process of breaking through to the other side of saying, "I'm going to do this." And yeah, I found that extremely intriguing. It's the TED, as most of you guys know, TED is not the place where you want to get too religious. They could just say, "We're not showing your talk at all." So we did kind of purposely keep some of that out. but it's actually a good part of how your mind got to the point where you're like, well, geesh, here I am in a woman's body and I can't do what I'm called to do. I mean, how did that affect you?
Sure, it had an effect, and this hearing that woman's story at your daughter's church, I heard a lot of beautiful labels from smiling people.
Mm,
I'm not gonna name names or mention Bible verses particularly, but I was told that I was wonderful, I was a treasure, I was smart, I was equal in God's eyes, but I wasn't given the opportunity.
mm,
So you can tell people all sorts of wonderful things about how much you value them and what they can do in the church. And you can be nodding and smiling, but if they don't have that equal opportunity, it shouts louder. They know when they're not at the table. They know when it's not a round table. They
mhm,
know when there's a hierarchy, and they know when they're alienated and excluded and second class. And that is eventually what I concluded, that me personally, Tiffany, was second class because there was something about me that wasn't eligible to reach this status. And I will quote, I think it was Charles Spurgeon, who said that if you are called to be a pastor, called to the ministry, do not backslide and become the King of England. Yeah. Meaning, like, pastors are all that, pastors, that is the highest form of ministry, and even among, the male ministers, all tried to say, "No, now here's some scripture, something like, "The head is important as the feet, is important as the eye and the mouth." But even then, if the feet and the head and the mouth don't have the opportunity to lead,
right.
then you come right back to that conversation about, "Are you sure you don't think that we're better or less
Yeah.
than?"
And
And
you touched
so,
on that a little bit too, actually. You were saying how labels can be complimentary labels, and they still we hey, it's not what people say, it's what how they say it, what their intention is behind it, and their actions that actually
yes,
let you know. And those
yeah,
complimentary
we're not
labels, they might just actually be genuine compliments. They don't realize the person's heard that 1,000 times and it's putting pressure on them to be someone they're not. But it could also be backhanded.
yeah, they could be distracting you, right before somebody pickpockets you. It could be so fake, and to think that they would use that to puff you up or to put you off is why in my TEDx, I'm like, "This is what they sound like. This is where they come in sentences, and this is how they can be used." And I just mentioned that a sentence or 2, I threw it in there,
Yeah.
um, aside, it felt like as an aside, because we could spend our whole lives, learning more about labels. I mean, I hope we do. I mean, we could research this stuff and measure it in a lab,
Mhm.
how often it comes up. And I did have about 6 people who came up to me after the talk and said, "In my friend group, I'm the label bell."
Wow.
Yeah, she told me how in her particular circumstance, she had been this voice that challenged the labels, and that I was in such a frenzy
Yeah.
up until that moment. My flight got canceled. I spent a night in Austin. I had 3 hours sleep 5 days before, and then I didn't eat lunch because I wanted to talk to everybody, and I wanted to listen to everybody else's talk, but you're in this zone,
Yeah.
and then someone comes up and says, "Hi, can I connect with you on LinkedIn? I wanna continue this conversation."
Oh.
And you're like, "Yes, yes, that's why I'm here, thank you." I really thank those people who came up and said something to me.
Yeah. Yeah, because, in some way or form and I noticed this while you were practicing too, and that's how come I knew that you had a powerful message, an idea that was going to spread, is, there was a time as you were practicing where no longer were people necessarily saying, "Oh, you should change this or that," but they were saying, I remember a label. I remember that I sometimes call my daughter, little shrimp or whatever. And oh, wow. We still joke to this day. I just remembered this. So if my daughter listens, she'll be like, I cannot believe you're bringing up this story. But this is what it did. It brought up people's thoughts of when they can maybe change the way that they say things, how they say it, the words that they use, or clarify differently, just to really keep people accountable, is what it really, I think, the message it's going to help people do. And one time we were driving up to a camping trip, I remember, um, and my husband, I still can't believe he said this. He said something to my daughter in the back seat and said, "Oh, you're such a little fat fairy." And she's not fat. But she was like, "What? Did you just call me that? And we all just started laughing our heads off, like, if for a long old time, but literally, like, a few years ago, she brought that up again. Yeah, like the time you called me fat fairy, and I'm like, "What? Well, how do you even remember that? I didn't remember that." And it was just, I think everyone had those moments of going, "Whoa, we do hold on to things that we hear." And then what I thought was really cool, and we haven't even got to how your daughter kinda, like, was the aha moment for you, but what I think is cool is that, yes, we can recognize labels, but then we can do what we started this conversation. We can look in the mirror and challenge the labels that we've heard and say, "No, I'm not going to hold on to that anymore. I'm not going to. I'm through with it, and I'm just gonna move forward with my life with what I know that I need to be and get rid of this weird thing that stuck with me for no reason," you know? That was really cool because, yeah, we have to watch what we say, but we also have to watch what we believe about what's been told to us. So, you were sitting there about to have a baby, and I think that was the time when you pinpointed where you had to say, "Uh-oh, I don't I don't like where this went in my life."
Yes, I did go back to that moment in the ultrasound room where they said it was a girl, and I was really in denial. I was like, "No, I'm having another boy. I like boys. Boys are great. Boys, boys, boys." And they told me 3 times, the OBGYNs, and then finally somebody bought us one of those
You are
3D,
having a
those
girl.
yes, the special 3D one, and I was like, 8, 7 months. Yeah, 7 months pregnant,
Like, I think I
and
have
they
to
said, "It's"
realize this.
yeah, I was in denial, and they finally said, "It's a girl," and
You didn't like
it
the way
was
it
on my
made you feel.
right, it was on my son's 4th birthday, and I didn't know what to do because I thought, "I'm a tomboy, I know how to raise a boy. I'm a tomboy, I love boys, and girls are" there was something about girls I didn't like, and I didn't enjoy the fact that I was thinking I wasn't going to like something about my daughter,
Mm,
and the fact for her entire gender was what I didn't like
it
about
felt
her.
wrong. Yeah.
That was shameful, right? That was like, "Oh, this" yeah, and so I was mad at myself. I was sad that I wasn't happy. I was scared. There were so many, multiple emotions. I had to figure out which one was the priority, and because I looked at my emotions, which some people are like, "Oh, those aren't logical. Those are the last thing you look at. You make a decision and you don't incorporate your emotions." Actually, your emotions will probably lead you to something super logical and subtle and nuanced and wise
Good
and
point.
mature if you start with your emotions. So that's why I incorporated that. And that's why in my TEDx, I thought, I don't want to create a vacuum and say, don't do this. I want to add something that you should be doing. Focus on your emotions. And you can probably unpack and rewind and figure out why that label, whether it was positive or uh, challenging, caused you to pause or to change your behavior. The power of words is so
Amazing.
powerful, but I think the most powerful element in the universe is emotions, uh, and I could go on
They
about
can be a
that.
gift to us, like, if we listen to what it's trying to tell us.
If you think of the canary in the coal mine, I've never been in a coal mine, I've never had a canary, but back in the day, I was told that there wasn't a lot of oxygen and there could be carbon monoxide buildup. There wasn't a lot of ventilation. So they would keep a caged canary in the coal mine with the workers. And when the canary stopped singing, they got out.
What?
The canary was the first sign that there was not enough oxygen and CO2 and poison. So we have canaries in our hearts and in our minds. And my canary stopped singing. I don't know when, I don't really know how,
Mm,
but I was like, "Wait, I'm not happy I'm having a daughter." There is silence in my soul
mm.
when they just told me I was officially a girl. And so because I thought I need to get out, I need to focus on this, something has to change. I want people and myself to value that canary and not be, oh, it's like a little yellow bird. The real stuff is mining coal. Well, the real stuff is getting out alive in
Mhm.
this life. And sometimes we do have to leave the coal mine and say it's not a productive day
It's so
and
true.
tend to the yeah, and a lot of canaries in my life have died, but I want to bring them back, and metaphorically, I hope that each of us, when we spread that word and give each other the permission to share these emotions, complex, and like I said, people can usually name about 3. Brené Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, enumerates 87, and she's a researcher, and that's how much she puts them in these great categories as well. I highly recommend Atlas of the Heart. I read it and reread it. And so if there's 87 emotions, we have some work to do. I've got to get some flashcards, and I literally made a scroll that I put on the top of the hallway in my home in Ocala, and it reached the floor and went across the floor,
Mhm.
and it was the 87 emotions. And I remember getting in a disagreement, having a tough time with one of my kids, and we stood there and we pinpointed an emotion that we was feeling so that we wouldn't be attacked.
Rather than name calling and rather than,
Yeah.
going low. I mean, that's huge if we I wonder, like, have that lesson to learn over and over and over again, and it's just something that our human nature wants to put, "You're just," and then blank, rather than, "You must be feeling," blank. And even though I train for this, it's something we have to revisit because we're always going to need to be able to hear that label bell, as you said it, and then adjust our mindset. And that's just part of growing, it's part of being human. You took that look in the mirror, and your daughter was your biggest gift because little did you know that by being able to say, "You know what? I don't want to believe that anymore. I don't want to look at an entire gender as less than any longer." I believe that that took your mind in a completely different place. I mean, everything's great with you and your daughter now, but that was a huge moment, that who knew you were going to share that, 14 years later on stage.
And she was on the front row
She
too,
was. She was so sweet.
and I was expecting to just see a bright light, but I could see her face,
That
and
was meant to be.
it threw me for a loop, because I thought, "Don't look at her, don't look at her." And then I had this double dialogue where I was trying to remember my
Yep.
content, plus telling myself, "Don't look at your daughter, don't look at your daughter."
But
And
I
that
mean, but
made
in
me
a
realize,
some deep way, it's like that had to be your beacon. Like that was the gift because it was like, remember, this is that emotion didn't come out the way that it did. I was glad. I was like, I don't care if you didn't want to look at her. I'm glad you saw her.
yeah, right, it is a beautiful memory in my mind that she was the only person I could see, and it was as if I was giving a speech to her.
Done. She came up and she was so witty. She says, "Hello, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm my mom's label bell," or something like that. I was like, "You're just too cute."
Unpaid position, unfortunately. Very valuable. And what it's so true that, that you talk about what you're doing in your realm and line of work. We are never done. We've never arrived. It's just the same as physical health, that I have to lift weights at the gym or else I get flabby, and I'll never be done catching myself with the label bell, catching other people, rewinding, applying it at work, at home, on TV, on the media. This was an election year. This was right after an election, and labels were flying all over the aisles, and we're it's so overwhelming, and emotions always feel epic,
It does.
always feel.
Yeah.
So just because I could maybe let's say I could label, every single one, all 87 of them, that doesn't make them any less potent or any easier. My tears are still hot. I still get just as anxious as at age 44 that I did when I was 3.
Right?
Like, my emotions have not evolved or matured.
Yeah.
I just learned how to handle the rawness of them and acknowledge them.
Yeah. That's kind of what I've been, in challenging myself to do is to say, if I have new challenges coming my way in the future, what and really, in a way, we're talking about limiting beliefs. What limiting beliefs am I holding on to that may have come from one flippant thing that somebody said at some point that I need to let go of? And I think that that's a constant reminder that we need to revisit. I'm sure that just to do this TED Talk, you had to leap over many labels that were telling you, no, you can't do this. What are you doing? Things like this that we have to achieve, we have to conquer.
Yeah. Yeah, I literally thought I couldn't afford it. But when I got accepted to TEDx Ocala, I was living in Ocala.
Yeah.
Then I moved to Salt Lake
You're
City,
like, what am I
and
doing?
I yeah, now I had to buy a ticket for myself and my daughter to fly back, and then it would be food, and then it would be all sorts of more expenses, and you know what? I got my nails done.
Right?
I didn't wanna spend money on that, but I kinda bumped it up. I was like, "I need to have my nails
That's
done. It'll make
right.
me feel more." But I remember swiping that credit card in Park City, Utah, thinking, "You
Ooh.
don't have money."
Like, what am I doing?
And yes, and I when I got to Salt Lake City, I got a full-time job, a part-time job, plus an online job, and so I was a primary breadwinner. I'm the transition of a move is always so expensive,
Huge.
and yes, and the time it takes to apply for a job and then train at that job, you don't have this margin of time to then write your speech and practice it. And so I thought, I can't believe I'm going to be on this world stage. I could be on the internet with millions of people in my
You
dreams.
will be.
The the opportunity to talk to millions like I've never had before, and I can't believe I haven't practiced it today or this week.
Yeah.
And so that it felt like a scarcity, like a pauper.
Yeah.
Um, but that's
You had to fight
I'm
it.
here to
You had to fight that mindset telling you, "You don't have enough time, you're not practicing enough," all that type of stuff.
and I was so amazed by the people who volunteered to drive me, the people who fed me.
Yeah.
Somebody showed up with their own gas and went out of the way, woke up super early, got to the airport super
Oh,
early so
wow.
that they would be right there when I got my bags because I lost my margin of getting to the rehearsal,
Yeah.
and drove me. The people who helped me with my microphone, the people who encouraged me and like made me feel like a queen.
Mm.
And it really did sink in. I cannot I felt special. I felt beautiful. I felt valued. I felt loved. And so I needed it. And I'm not I mean I did after I did the first mic check and the first rehearsal where I was blanking even though I had to give this speech the very next day. I went into the bathroom stall. I grabbed that cold porcelain sink and I had myself a good cry. I had gotten that far. It was just 24 more hours.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, but it's just an amazing thing when we step out and take a leap of faith like that, and we say, "I'm not going to listen to this because it's something that I know that I need to do, and I don't know how it's gonna work out. But in spite of that, I am going to move forward." And that's what I always saw in you, like, you and I didn't even talk about the many challenges that you had until we were able to chill and we were there, right? But it was like that mindset of deliberate saying, "In spite of all of this going on, I'm gonna keep doing this because something inside of you said it's the right thing to do. It's what you should be doing." And it paid off. I think it pays off for all of us when we really choose to do the bold thing. It's just, it's like we can't learn the lessons that we need to learn until we do the things we're called to do.
yes, and the people won't they didn't see me crying in the bathroom stall. They didn't see me with the makeup artist, who encouraged me. They didn't see me at the Austin airport at 1 a.m. trying to find a Lyft or an Uber.
Yeah.
None of that is on tape.
No.
They're only going to see the 11 minutes and 20 seconds
Mhm.
that I was on the red dot, and and they haven't seen the sweat,
Yeah.
right, and the blood and the tears. So I do encourage people that you've been given a story and there is a message in your story. Sometimes just telling the story, people will get the message. Sometimes you can share a message that with a story as the background
Mhm.
because it is people like you and I that are given these as gifts. Our experiences, we didn't earn them. They were given to us
Mhm.
for good or for bad. And they're so universal. They really are. There's nothing new under the sun in that we're all I heard a quote, "We're not all in the same boat, we're all in the same storm."
Yeah.
And we're all in different kinds of boats.
Yeah.
So, get in your boat and join the storm. I
Right.
encourage you. And it was lovely to pack up a house and drive cross country with that little bit of information in my back pocket that once I got settled, I was gonna get to come back to Ocala in this triumphant form
Yeah.
because I kind of left so quick with my tail between my legs. A lot of people helped me, and it was nice to say, "Yeah, but but guess what I'm working on? So even though my life at that time was so messy and I had to resign from my job and I was making so many decisions so quickly, it was
It
decision
was a
fatigue.
whirlwind. Yeah.
Yes, big decisions. I was like, saying to my daughter, "Do you wanna stay in Florida?" "No." "Oh, okay." What so my sister had an opportunity. It was like rolling the dice from hour to hour sometimes. But the solid thing I had was, "Yeah, but I'm gonna do a TEDx."
Right.
Like, that was a solid beacon of light. "Yeah, but wherever I land, whatever I do, next November, this November, I'm gonna do a TEDx."
Yeah.
And so it did give me it gave me confidence. I
Wow.
I was accepted, even if I hadn't given it. I was accepted for a TEDx,
Mhm.
and I think I learned that if you're holding on by 2 knuckles, if you're holding on by your fingernails, you're still holding on. And yet the rocket ship will still take you to the moon, right?
I know.
Because you yeah, you just don't give up, even though you're like, "This is crazy. This is not the right time."
But that is
Don't give up.
also something, though, about our mind that we don't realize is that we can accomplish big things even when we're doing a whole bunch of other stuff that's important. Like, it's amazing the things that we can do at the same time. Where I used to have this thought that focus meant that everything else I could not do, and I'd be even guilty of that where, like, everyone out and there is a time and place where you have to do that. There's a time and place where everyone out, I need to write right now or whatever it is. But you know what? Life goes on. You're in the meantime, you're still going to work and looking for a job and taking care of your child and picking them up, getting mad about something. Like, all of that stuff is happening. And how often do we use that as an excuse to not focus on the thing we were meant to do?
Right? Once you do a TEDx, it's like, "What's
You're like,
next?"
"What in the world?"
And I said,
That
"You know what?"
just the thought of that, right?
Yeah, I said, "I think I'm ready to write my book."
Yeah.
I think the TEDx showed me that little by little, while I still have to walk the dog and pay the bills, I'm gonna start writing my book. Because if I could do a TEDx, I could also write a book. In fact, writing a book would be easier than a
I
TEDx.
think but that
Yeah.
is just a crazy thing, right? The way that it makes you believe in yourself after you do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking of or gravitational pull and an orbit.
Uh,
Once once that planet is moving, the moons will start to rotate around that planet.
yeah,
So it's like the belief is what keeps all the other crazy or dreamy and hopeful
yeah,
stuff going. You need that momentum. So the core is have an idea worth spreading and then put in the hard work and don't give up. Get yourself a coach and listen to your coach and watch the timer
yeah.
because the timer is
It's a
a
thing.
taskmaster.
Yeah.
It sure is. Yeah, and then you'll be a beautiful galaxy.
Yeah, and honestly, if people that are listening, in your heart because it will pop at you where you're like, "Oh, there's something that's big that I've been thinking I cannot do." And for someone else, maybe speaking would be the last thing in the whole wide world they would wanna do, but you know what it is, you know? It could be writing a book. It could be, starting a blog. It could be just, approaching a situation at work differently, standing up and asking for the promotion or, whatever it is, it's worth it. It's worth it to stand up and do that thing, right?
Yeah, what she said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it just
Amen.
so is, and I can say that you did it backwards from me where I was like, you were a coach, you were invited to be a coach because you've done speaking with Toastmasters and some of the big people, and so she was like, "Let's come be a coach," and I did it the opposite where I was a speaker and then a coach, and I felt like I was, nervous about asking. You should have seen how funny I was like, "I wanna help, and I kind of want to offer the coach, but maybe I'm not ready for that. Maybe and something inside of me is going like, yes, you are. You've already helped a couple of people do a TEDx. Like, what are you waiting for? And then finally, I'm like, I'm just going to send her the email. And so I went through that type of thing where how close I was to talking myself out of it, and then we wouldn't even be here today.
I had no idea. There were times I felt like a blubbering maniac, and you were, like, on the chopping board. You knew when to be decisive. You knew when to draw me out. I was such a frazzled mess. I would have never guessed that you had second guesses about that because when the organizer and founder of TEDx followed up with me and was like, "How's the coach?" I was like, "She's perfect. She's everything I need and wanted. Thank you so much."
Thank
Yeah,
you.
every single time. Yeah.
But
Oh,
it was a lot of
share it.
confirmation going on in my mind where I was like, you feel a certain thing where you're like, "Oh, I'm in a space where I should have been." It would have been tragic if I allowed my own, allowed myself to talk myself out of that. So I'm glad I didn't.
I can't imagine what I would have done if you had talked yourself out of it, so thank you.
Oh, it would have been a flop for sure. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. You would have done amazing anyway.
You never
But
know,
then we
no, no.
wouldn't have the friendship we do. So, that's super duper important. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll take you to Mission Barbecue anytime, order all the meats, all
exactly.
the sauces, and the sweet tea
We had so
for
much
life.
fun
You've
for
got a
life.
Mission Barbecue meal waiting for you on my tab.
That's right. I'm like, "Ooh, yes, we should do that again." Yeah, that's an inside joke, guys. She talked me into trying new barbecue stuff and, I'm a fan. So,
So good. Yeah, we
but I
had a
think
great
we
time.
should meet in, where was it that I had the really great stuff? Over in, Kansas City. Yeah. We'll have to
Yeah.
do a girls trip to Kansas City. That's where I had the best
Do they have a TEDx?
I don't know. Let's
We could
find
both
out.
both be coaches. Why don't you speak? I'll be your coach.
Right? And we're only going to try out at places that have amazing barbecue.
Mhm.
If they don't
Yeah,
have amazing barbecue, we're out.
Texas, Oklahoma,
Yeah.
Texas.
I don't know. I think that's something we need to do. But anyways, thank you so much for coming on this podcast and just sharing your story. It means so much to me. It was an absolute pleasure coaching you. I feel the same way where I couldn't have had a better official experience of helping someone move from idea to actually making that dream come true. You were beautiful up there. I just cannot wait for it to come out. When I put this out, you guys are going to be able to already see it. We're having a pocket of time where we're going to record, but go on YouTube, look up Tiffany Edith TEDx. That's all you got to do. It'll pop right up. You don't even have to put Ocala, Florida, and you will be able to watch and really be moved on how you can be challenged to look at labels in a whole new way. So again, thank you, Tiffany, for coming.
Yeah, my mindset has been more focused, Share Kretz, and I do appreciate what you're doing, the momentum that you have, and I I just value every conversation with you. Thank you.
Well, we're going to have many more to come. But for now, it's time for us to say goodbye. So,
Bye, y'all.
all right. Thank you guys for listening to this talk. I'd love to hear from you of what you got out of this, and feel free to email me or reach out. And until next time, live solution focused. Thank you so much for joining me. But wait, before you go, don't forget to check the show notes. That's where you'll find all the places you can follow me on social media, and just, it's the way we keep in touch. And I have a newsletter called Hope Notes. And if you hop on sharekretz.com, you'll see in the menu bar, basically, it'll tell you how to get in that. And I'm going to have some really great little tidbits that I want to share whenever it comes up. That's where that happens. And honestly, the people that get my Hope Notes also get coupons and different stuff from my products as they come up. So I'd love to have you there, especially if you're thriving to be more solution focused in your life. And if you're interested in joining a challenge that's going to help you with your communication, join the free 3-day conversation challenge. It's free right now. I don't know how long I'm going to keep it that way, but I want to see you there. So it's time for us to get going. Until next time, live solution focused.